So in Romans 4:18, this version reads it like this. It says, when everything was hopeless, Abraham believed anyway. Deciding to live not on the basis of what he saw he couldn't do, but on what God said he would do. So when everything was hopeless, Abraham believed anyway. It's wow, it truly is. It's just it's so much. That's where like Paul said about that this mind that was in Christ, let it be in you, and be transformed by the renewing of your mind. These scriptures that talk to us about changing the way we think and how we let our thinking be aligned with what God has, what God says. And that's very, like Olu was saying, I think it's just yes, it's a choice, but I think it's also something we develop, almost like a discipline, is because we know that emotions are very strong at times. We know that fear and things come at us in life, whether it's just in circumstances or it's against the promises that God's given us, and it pushes against that, and it makes us feel like maybe I heard wrong, maybe I don't know if God really is going to do it, maybe I've done something wrong, maybe all these things that come against us and are choosing to believe what God has for us, or what God said, whether it's your personal promise, as it was for Abraham, or whether it's just his word alone, that it's constantly going to be challenged. And something I was thinking of when you're talking about the reason, and it's not an excuse anyway, I know that we want to encourage one another, because I think if anybody's in this group, and especially been for any length of time, I know Amigo hasn't, but I still know that it's in his spirit and his heart, is that we want to see God do some amazing things.
Yes.
And I know that he's growing each one of us, and I speak from and I'm sure with Olu and other people, it's just that I think there's a part of me that at time from growing up, just because I've heard it so much from my youth about these great miracles that God's done through men of God and women of God. And I think I really, not that it's bad, because I know that a lot of people came to see Jesus just to see what he would do, but I know that God also wants to do greater things with people that he's intimate with and that he's close to, and not so much entertain them, but teach them as well, and teach them that he wants to do these things through us as well, not just let them be, shows to where we're like, wow, and we get the goosebumps and everything else, because that's what we see. We see a lot of that in his word, is that a lot of people came to get the goosebumps, but very few stuck around to learn of him and to want to know him and follow him. And so I believe that those things are coming, and I know that so many people said that, and for whatever reason, but the point I was getting at, brother, was that with the enemy, when you're on his side, not that I don't know, this is just me, not that I've been on that side in a sense with the supernatural, but I could see it with his tricks and stuff, that there's no resistance. But when you're pursuing those things for the things of God, there's lots of resistance from the enemy, especially mentally. And spiritually, because he does not want God to be glorified. He does not want God to get praise. But if you want to dabble in his stuff, here you go. How about you want? So understanding that too I think is helpful, is that so we know that as we pursue the things and to see great things of God, you expect much resistance. Expect it, because that's saying that, hey, you're on track. You're on track, because he doesn't. I know you said you experienced it whenever you and Sophia were praying for some people, and then boom, and the attack came at her, and I was like, wow,
it's real.
Yeah,
it's real.
So those are just a couple things that get us warmed up here. Let's go into 2 Kings, and The phrase or the story we were going to start on starts in 7, but let's just get a little bit of background. So let's start back in 6, and we know the prophet Elisha, and he was the protege of Elijah, but we also know the great and mighty things. So, just again, is something as I was just looking into this and even hearing it more as Olu was talking is, I think as we read tonight, is that we're going to see multiple opportunities for people to either believe or not to believe. They had a choice. And we are going to see either the consequences or the rewards of choosing to believe or not to believe. So I may get I'll start off reading until my mouth gets too dry, and then I may ask somebody to help me out. But let's start off in chapter 6, verse 1. So one day, the group of prophets came to Elisha and told him, "As you can see, this place where we meet with you is too small. Let's go down to the Jordan River where there are plenty of logs. There we can build a new place for us to meet." "All right," he told them, "go ahead." "Please come with us," someone suggested. "I will," he said. So he went with them. When they arrived at the Jordan, they began cutting down trees. But as one of them was cutting a tree, his axe head fell into the river. "Oh, sir," he cried, "it was a borrowed axe." "Where did it fall?" the man of God asked. When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it into the water at that spot. Then the axe head floated to the surface. "Grab it," Elisha said, and the man reached out and grabbed it. Interesting is that there's still, you see that, even though it was so quick, it happened so quick, it still required, no different with the floating table, it still required this man to take action, to believe it.
That's right.
He's like, okay, all right, yes, I'm going to get, because I mean, all of us would be tempted to just stand there and be like, I just can't believe, just sitting there rubbing their head like, this is just crazy, what's going on here, right? What is he doing? Why did he throw a stick in the water? So many questions that could be racing in your mind, but yet rather just don't. Just shoot, believe, grab it, hold on to it. And my kids they got me started, and now they get irritated with it, which they tend to do that when it comes to certain movies they may find at the library. So lately they found the Man vs. Wild. And I never had seen it before. It was on the Discovery Channel. I don't know when it was on, but it's just so grabbed me, and I've been sharing it with so many people. And but just how there's so many things, I won't go long into it, but just what I appreciate about him, even though some people say the dude's nuts, he's crazy, he eats things, he does things that are just strange and weird, because it's all about, his thing is about teaching about survival. If you were stranded, how would you survive? If you were dropped off, or if you were crashed or somewhere, how would you survive? But that's the thing that is one of the key things to him in survival, is his mind. He's choosing to stay positive. He chooses to not even when he gets when amazing things happen. Let's say he grabs a vine and he swings across a waterfall and he's able to get to the other side. He wasn't just going on, he tested everything, he did everything he could, but then he jumped. And when he jumped, he made it. And when he made it, he was excited, he was pumped, and it was a thrill, it was everything. But immediately, he was like, okay, now it's time, we gotta get going. Just his mindset is what God has just so spoke to me on, is how we as believers too, is if we just begin to just, like tonight, is just believe it, take it, and go with it. Don't overthink it, don't ever try to figure it out, but just take it and go with it. And how that pleases God. It doesn't mean that tomorrow, I know, in the same way with this survival guy, I mean, he spends 5 days out in the middle of nowhere doing, surviving. And every day he has to wake up and has to tell himself, okay, but we got to get going. Okay, we got to do this. Okay, and it's going to be a good day, and he just has to get his mind and motivated and believing that it's going to work out somehow, some way. He's going to make it. And so much I see that with our walk with God, is how the enemies, when we have promises, we have a future, we know that God's got something in store. every day it can seem like survival. Every day it can seem like pushing against you, and you're having to strain at everything spiritually. But yet, keeping that mindset as God said it. God said it, that settles it. God said it, that settles it. So let's go on to the next one. When the king of Aram was at war with Israel, verse 8, he would confer with his officers and say, we will mobilize our forces at such and such a place. But immediately, Elisha, the man of God, would warn the king of Israel, do not go near that place, for the Arameans are planning to mobilize their troops there. So the king of Israel would send word to the place indicated by the man of God. Time and again, Elisha warned the king so that he would be on alert there. The king of Aram became very upset over this. He called his officers together and demanded, which of you is the traitor? Who has been informing the king of Israel of my plans? It is not us, my lord the king, one of the officials replied. Elisha the prophet in Israel tells the king of Israel even the words you speak in the privacy of your bedroom. Go and find out where he is, the king commanded, so I can send troops to seize him. And the report came back, Elisha is at Dothan. So one night the king of Aram sent a great army with many chariots and horses to surround the city. When the servant of the man of God got up early the next morning and went outside, there were troops, horses, and chariots everywhere. Oh, sir, what will we do now? The young man cried to Elisha. Don't be afraid, Elisha told him, for there are more on our side than on theirs. Okay, pause right there. Another moment. What are you believing? He said, he told the young prophet, or his servant, whatever he was, there's more here than that. And I mean, because we just read it like I'm reading now, and we think boom, boom. But still, let's get into the moment. Is that if I know he knew who Elisha was, and I know he's seen, but still, there's just that human part of us that just wants to go, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? There's more than, look, there's no one here for us. We're doomed.
Wow.
But yet Elisha, in this time, for him and for us, who would be reading this now, Elisha says the prayer, Lord, open his eyes and let him see. So the Lord opened the young man's eyes, and he looked up, and he saw that hillside around Elisha was filled with horses and chariots of fire. As the Aramean army advanced toward him, Elisha prayed, O Lord, please make them blind. So the Lord struck them with blindness, as Elisha had asked. Then Elisha went out and told them, You've come the wrong way. This isn't the right city. Follow me, and I will take you to the man you were looking for. And he led them to the city of Samaria. As soon as they had entered Samaria, Elisha prayed, O Lord, now open their eyes and let them see. Wow. So the Lord opened their eyes, and they discovered that they were in the middle of Samaria. When the king of Israel saw them, he shouted to Elisha, My father, should I kill them? Should I kill them? Of course not, Elisha replied. Do we kill prisoners of war? Give them food and drink and send them home again to their master.
That's so weird.
And again, another instance, just that exactly. The normal, again, he's listening to the Lord. The normal response would be, these are my enemies, they're done, take them out. This is going to make things so much easier on us because these people, we're going to go on to read, these people will not leave them alone. They do not leave the Israelites alone. And how tempting it had to have been for the king of Israel to just say, hey, I don't care what you say, Elisha, we're taking these guys out. But yet he chose, the king was wise, and he chose to obey the Lord. So the king made a great feast for them, and then sent them home to their master. After that, the Arameans raiders stayed away from the land of Israel. And again, it's just, we don't know how much time passed here, but it says they stayed away. But the very next verse says, sometime later, they came back. King Ben-Hadad of Aram mustered his entire army and besieged Samaria. As a result, there was a great famine in the city. The siege lasted so long that a donkey's head,
Yes.
Exactly. This is getting us preparation for the story tonight.
Mm-hmm.
The siege lasted so long that a donkey's head sold for 8 pieces of silver, and a cup of dug stone for 5 pieces of silver. And as I was reading this week, I found out that's not actually like bird's poop. Just that's FYI. That was a terminology they used for just more or less like a handful of beans. That was what you got. I really thought, I know for all my life I thought that was, and then when I was studying I was like, oh, okay. Because I mean, even a donkey's head isn't waste. It isn't like foul waste. It's just not much to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not poisonous.
Uh-huh.
So it was like, how could they eat birds and not be poisoned? But it's just a term that they use. And so it was just like literally, I think it was more or less like this.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to feed your family on a handful of beans. So, again, just FYI. But. So one day as the king of Israel was walking along the wall of the city, a woman called to him, "Please help me, my lord the king." He answered, "If the Lord doesn't help you, what can I do? I have neither food from the threshing floor, nor wine from the press to give you." But then the king asked, "What is the matter?" She replied, "This woman said to me, 'Come on, let's eat your son today. Then we'll eat my son tomorrow.'" Wow, is right. What?
Did the sons get a say in it?
Apparently not.
It's like, let's eat the mother.
Yeah, exactly. It must have been young.
I don't think it was a teenage son.
Yeah,
Yeah, probably babies.
That's funny. They chose the sons.
Right?
So we cooked my son and ate him.
Wow.
Then the next day I said to her, "Kill your son so we can eat him." But she has hidden her son. When the king heard this, he tore his clothes in despair.
Fernanda.
It's interesting on that survival,
Some
that guy's survival stuff. He's
Yeah,
not-
that's what I say during the whole show of that Man versus Wild. Nope, nopity, nope, I'll be dead. Just if I
And
Nope.
he's never said anything about cannibalism, but he just, as he's doing his thing, he shares stories that he's learned of and knows of, and it's crazy. People that have done that to stay alive in times.
Yeah.
And, I know Jessica and I too. It's like you don't know till you've been there, but
I was like, you know, I'm just telling you guys right now, if I get stranded in the middle of nowhere, just have a funeral and say goodbye to me, because I'm dead. I ain't eating that stuff. I am not doing what he said. I'm dead. I'm going home to be with the Lord. Just be happy for me. Yeah, that's all.
Maybe we'll eat the bugs. Eat it first, and then it's something that I can
¿Los
do with it.
jugadores en los Andes?
No.
so it's just again, it's painting the picture
Se comieron
of how bad the situation
This was
was.
a very
I mean, this is
bad
just
situation.
this is the lowest of low of that these people are just resorted to cannibalism. So the king, when he heard this, he tore his clothes in despair. And as the king walked along the wall, the people could see that he was wearing burlap under his robe next to his skin. "May God strike me and even kill me if I don't separate Elisha's head from his shoulders this very day."
Wow.
Elisha was sitting in his house with the elders of Israel when the king sent a messenger to summon him. But before the messenger arrived, Elisha said to the elders, "A murderer sent a man to cut off my head. When he arrives, shut the door and keep him out. We will soon hear his master's steps following him." Again, this is another believe or die. Because Elisha, again, he knows God has shown him. But these people that it's always like, it's crazy. It's like, I'm sure Elijah did the same thing to him. It's like, a lot of times it seemed like Elijah wasn't lifting a finger. He was telling people.
Yeah.
And just like he did, he told Elisha probably multiple times, do these things. So Elisha knew how things work. The process is, the leader speaks, the servants act. Those who are being taught, they act. Because why? Because that's the way it works with God and us.
Oh yeah.
It's not as something that he's got a power trip and he wants to show that he's bigger and more powerful. He's trying to teach is that's the way it works with our Heavenly Father and us. He speaks, I do what he says. So he's teaching them there. So again, these servants have to choose to believe. What do you mean? He sent a murderer's coming. What do you mean, shut the door? I was supposed to try to keep the king and his soldiers out? Yeah, do what I said. Do it, and you'll see. So we'll see soon here the master's footsteps. While Elisha was still saying this, the messenger arrived. And the king said, all this misery is from the Lord. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer? That went really fast, if you noticed. It says as he was saying this, the king arrived. So it's like the messenger just like boom. I mean, it just like happened really quick there. But still, because he listened, there was no, because the way it makes it seem is, the way we're reading it is that Elisha's head should have already been cut off by the time the king got there.
Oh yeah.
He was done. But because of it, now the king has arrived. And he didn't seem to question anything. Why isn't Elisha dead? Now he's talking to the prophet. And he's just saying, hey. And I find my thoughts are, it doesn't make it clear, but my thoughts were, why is the king so furious? Why is he blaming this on Elisha? And I was like, my thoughts were on this time of reading it through was because Elisha let these guys go. Elisha was the one who said, feed them and send them back. And here they are back now, starving us. And Elisha, why did you let this happen? Why is God doing this? Why should I wait for the Lord any longer? So we go on to chapter 7. Elisha replied, listen to this message from the Lord. This is what the Lord says. By this time tomorrow, in the markets of Samaria, 5 quarts of choice flour will cost only 1 piece of silver, and 10 quarts of barley grain will cost only 1 piece of silver. So where were we at before? A donkey's head was 80 pieces of silver,
Oh wow.
and the little cup of nothing was 5 pieces of silver. And now, wow, 5 quarts of flour for 1 piece of silver, and 10 quarts of barley grain, whichever, for 1 piece of silver. That's huge.
Oh yeah.
That is absolutely, that's like totally opposite. Night and day. One day. Me and Olu and others, we've encouraged each other time and time again in these last few years. And one day, and man, and that's Amigo. And Amigo was going through his time, and then in one day,
everything changed.
everything changed. And it's been changed for 4 weeks. It's amazing. It's like, sometimes it's so hard to hang on and to just keep believing and trusting, but God knows. Especially those promises that He planted. Some were from things people spoke over us, but others may have just been things that He placed in us. Those promises, those dreams that He placed in us. And it's just so hard, but like Abraham, we choose to, when it seems hopeless, when it seems pointless, when it seems impossible, we choose to believe. We choose it. Not because it feels it. Not because not because it makes sense. But just because it's what God said. And we're going to find, here's our Thomas here. Verse 2, the officer assisting the king said to the man of God, that couldn't happen, even if the Lord opened the windows of heaven.
Wow.
He could have just, why did he have to go there?
He didn't have to go there.
No, he could have just said, whatever, you Elisha, whatever, man. You need to go get, I know there's no food, so whatever, you just lost it. But he went there, that even the Lord couldn't do this. But Elisha replied, you will see it happen with your own eyes, but you won't be able to eat any of it. Something else as I was reading the passage was, it's interesting, and we see it time and time again with God. And I don't believe, I know for a fact, none of us as human beings enjoy the part of it And it's that stripping part that God does with us a lot of times. And how Israel, time and time again, God delivered them. He did. And He delivered them in mighty, mighty ways. And He raised up mighty, mighty people like Elisha and Elijah and the leaders of Gideon and Samson. But man, the part that none of us as human beings like is God showed up when they were at the bottom of the bottom. When everything about them had been stripped away. There was nothing left for them to cling to. Nothing left. And now, God sweeps in like a mighty eagle, like a powerful delivering force, and He says, I am God. I am the one who's in charge. I have always been in charge. I will always be in charge. Why? As Jesus says to us, and as He did to His disciples, why you of so little faith? I am the Almighty. I am the beginning and the end. And it's like, wow, God help us. Sometimes I weep and I cry and I just say, give me grace, because I don't believe you so many times. I don't trust you so many times. And I'm sorry. But give me grace to trust you more. There's that song, that hymn we know. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus. Just to take Him at His word. Just to rest on His promises. Just to say, thus says the Lord. And He says at the end of that, He says, oh, for grace to trust you more.
We need much grace.
Amen. It really is. It's so, just so we can change in our thinking.
Yes.
Because it's hard, but in our thinking, the stripping is a good thing. The stripping is a good thing. The pressure is a good thing. The challenges are a good thing. Man, that's so hard in a culture that just says pleasure, 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 comfort, comfort, comfort. It's so hard to get your mind around that. But it is God. It's not God being some, I can't hardly say the word. I can't imagine what it is in Espanol, but masochist.
Masochistic?
Yes,
Or
masochistic.
masochist?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not just someone who just loves torturing his kids and loves. No, it's not Him at all. And but I know
It's so difficult in the Western culture, especially. Very, very difficult. People that are used to persecution and suffering, it's like, okay.
Yes.
It's the mindset is different.
Yep.
When you're used to, not being completely comfortable under persecution, having to depend on God for everything, basically.
Yes.
For life itself.
Yeah.
But here, and praise God. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having healthcare, medicine, and all this conveniences of life. There's nothing wrong with it. If it doesn't take us away from depending on God, there's nothing. But if it takes us away from depending on God, then that's the problem. I think that's what most of us have to kind of get over.
Absolutely.
We got to get over that.
Yep.
And God will strip, especially the ones that He loves the most and He wants to use you. He's going to strip you.
Yes.
He's going to get you to a place of dependence.
Yep.
And it's not it's not easy. It's not easy at all.
It was, like I said, that the kids there was bringing videos home from the library, and another one that Bailey grabbed it, or maybe, I don't know, but anyways, it was about Israel, and I was like just keeping up with them. They're just a very fascinating country and God's people and stuff. But something I learned this time with this video, again talking about the persecution and people who deal with that stuff regularly, was that every kid in Israel goes to the armed forces.
If they're physically able.
If they're physically able.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they all have to.
It's everyone. It's not an option.
Wow.
Because of the persecution that they're under, just being in that little nation that they're at. But that was like, wow. And again, it's not that that's a horrible thing, but you just think of in this nation, we're so many freedoms and blessings. We're like, if you want to go serve your country in the armed forces, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. If you just want it to be a career, just let. But it's like that is something that because they know that so many people are out to harm them. so many nations that are surrounded that it is you will. If you're physically able, you will be in the armed forces.
Oh yeah.
And serve your time.
Yeah.
And be trained.
Be
They want
trained,
everybody. They want all the people to be trained.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that was very interesting, I thought. All right, so we're at verse 3. The story takes a little side note. So now there were 4 men with leprosy sitting at the entrance of the city gates. Why should we sit here waiting to die? They asked each other. We will starve if we stay here. But with the famine in the city, we will starve if we go back there. So we might as well go out and surrender to the Aramean army. If they let us live, so much the better. But if they kill us, we would have died anyway. So at twilight, they set out for the camp of the Arameans. But when they came to the edge of the camp, no one was there. For the Lord had caused the Aramean army to hear the clatter of speeding chariots and the galloping of horses and the sounds of a great army approaching. The king of Israel has hired the Hittites and the Egyptians to attack us, they cried to one another. So they panicked and ran into the night, abandoning their tents, horses, donkeys, and everything else as they fled for their lives. When the lepers arrived at the edge of the camp, they went into one tent after another, eating and drinking wine.
It's a party loca.
Oh yeah.
Party loca. A small party loca.
Small party loca.
Yeah. Oh man.
And they carried off silver and gold and clothing and hid it. You know what? I thought as I read this time, I was like, the lepers were wise.
Oh yeah.
Because they knew people. And they knew that as soon as things were back to normal, they're going to be rejected. They're going to have nothing.
No.
That's
I was
right.
like, wow, they were wise.
Right. That's right.
Wow.
Because they said, it's not just about these 4. I mean, lepers, they were in colonies. They stuck together. They had nothing.
They were
Outcasts.
outcasts. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, they were outcasts.
So they were able to take stuff and get for them and for their other, I guess, I don't know if I'd say comrades, but other people who were suffering with them. So they were drinking, and verse 9. Finally they said to each other, this is not right. Finally they said to each other.
After eating and drinking.
Yeah, for a while.
Yeah.
At least it was only a few hours.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
days. This is a day of good news, and we aren't sharing it with anyone. If we wait until morning, some calamity will certainly fall upon us. Come on, let's go back and tell the people at the palace. So they went back to the city and told the gatekeepers what had happened. We went out to the Aramean camp, they said, and no one was there. The horses and donkeys were tethered and the tents were all in order, but there wasn't a single person around. Then the gatekeepers shouted to the news to the people in the palace. The king got out of bed in the middle of the night and told his officers, I know what has happened. The Arameans know we are starving, so they've left their camp and hidden in the fields. They're expecting us to leave the city, and then they will take us alive and capture the city. And remember, again, I know the king was in bed and he woke up and everything else, but the king has forgotten what Elisha said. He's not thinking about what Elisha said. He's back in his circumstances. He's back in his hard time. He's back in his woe is me and what am I going to do and how am I going to turn this thing around and I'm the king and it's all back on him and not on God. One of his officers replied, we had better send out scouts to check into this. Let them take 5 of the remaining horses. If something happens to them, it will be no worse than if they stay here and die with the rest of us. Again, it kind of reminds me of, it just makes me think of Thomas. Well, let's go. If he's going to die, we'll die with him. He wasn't believing anything positive, but he was just like, all right, let's just go, fine. So the king finally gives in, all right, whatever, let's do it. So 2 chariots with horses were prepared, and the king sent scouts to see what happened to the Aramean army. They went all the way to the Jordan River, following a trail of clothing, equipment, that the Arameans had thrown away in their mad rush to escape. The scouts returned and told the king about it. And the people of Samaria rushed out and plundered the Aramean camp. So it was true that 5 quarts of choice flour were sold that day for 1 piece of silver, and 10 quarts of barley grain were sold for 1 piece of silver, just as the Lord had promised. The king appointed his officer to control the traffic at the gate, but he was knocked down and trampled to death as the people rushed out. So everything happened exactly as the man of God had predicted when the king came to his house. The man of God had said to the king, "By this time tomorrow in the markets of Samaria, 5 quarts of choice flour will cost only 1 piece of silver, and 10 quarts of grain will cost 1 piece of silver." The king's officer had replied, "That couldn't happen, even if the Lord opened the windows of heaven." And the man of God had said, "You will see it happen with your own eyes, but you won't be able to eat any of it." And so it was, for the people trampled him to death at the gate. So how we will be tempted, we have been, will be, is that no matter the circumstances can get, we all know, can get very hard, very, very challenging to your faith, very challenging to God's promises. But that we choose to hold on to what He said, choose to hold on to the end. Because not that, yes, God's good and His rewards and His kindness, but that we will have, by His grace, because we know that His Word says that faith is what pleases Him. It pleases Him. Because we know that, what can we offer God? I mean, there's nothing we can do, because we know that we are literally in ourselves, and of ourselves, nothing. We're created by Him, we're made by Him, so what can we give back to Him? But yet, His Word says that is what pleases Him, is when we believe Him, and we trust Him beyond, especially like Abraham, especially like the servants that we know that God, they bless God because they're choosing to believe Him no matter what circumstances. I know, that's why I say I ask for much grace, and that would be, I believe that's the prayer tonight for our group, is much grace to believe. Because there may be some serious, even in the future, there's going to be challenging. There's going to be times that it's really going to, but that we choose to believe Him, despite what we can see, because we know that He is able. Whether that means whatever He chooses to do, but the point is He is able to do exceedingly abundantly above anything that we can ask or think. So, praise God for that.
Praise God. Praise God. That's